In this episode, it's time for me to give you the first impressions of Eastwood's tungsten grinder. Hey, welcome to the channel. My name's Grant Tommy. This is my channel, Straight Six Fan, where I like to focus on budget-minded, relatable, creative builds, a little something I like to call offbeat hot rodding. And today we unbox for the first time one of my Christmas gifts, Eastwood Tungsten grinder. And honestly, Eastwood, I think I kind of relate him to in the off-roading world. So the company Rough Country. I remember when they first started making lift kits, they were kind of seen as the bottom of the industry, low budget kind of company, but they kept at it, and over the years, like, their reputation just grew and grew, and they started making more sophisticated kits, and the quality, like, their reputation just grew and grew, and they're one of the best companies out there for lift kits. So similarly, Eastwood, I think, I haven't used any of their tools, so I'm excited to get my hands on their stuff for the first time. You know, they make a lot of metalworking stuff. They make, almost any shop tool that you would want in the automotive world. Welders, sandblasters, brakes, bead rollers, things like that. So, English wheels, hammer and dollies, just almost everything. Bodyworking to, they probably make brake benders. Anyway, I'm excited to get to use the tungsten grinder for the first time. This guy behind me, my Everlast 206 Pi 3-in-1 multi-process inverter machine. Boy, that's a mouthful, right? So I love it. You know, it's an arc welder, it's a plasma cutter, and it's a TIG welder. And TIG welding, while really only in the past probably year and a half have I really tried my hand at. I got over one of those humps to, I feel like I kind of have a better handle on it. It's going to be one of those things here in 2019 I want to focus on even more so than what I did in 2018. But the tungsten grinder, so to date, what I've been doing to grind my tungsten electrodes, stand by, which for the record, I typically use 3/32 diameter, 2% lanthanated. So that's the blue tip electrode. Basically a kind of a universal suggestion, or a do-it-all by Jody on one episode at one point in time. I probably taken him a little out of context, but that's what I use. So to date, I have been sharpening my electrodes with my mini grinder. And while this actually probably represents one of my more successful grinds, you can see I've got some nicks and cuts further up the grind, and it's not exactly 100% probably the proper angle you want, but by and large I would be pretty happy with using this electrode here. Now the mini grinder, while chucking it up in your drill, works for me, and it's one way to do the job. I'm excited to now see having basically a grinding stone, which this tungsten grinder's got a diamond wheel on it. That's not going to get contaminated because I'm not going to ever use the grinding wheel for something else like I do on my mini grinder. And it's got a proper slot in it for the different angles of grind. Okay, first things first. For starters, it's got a nice weight to it. It's it looks like it's about the size of a Dremel, but it's definitely a little heavier than that. But I think there's also something to be said that this is sort of a no-nonsense construction. Not any bigger than it needs to be, or has to be, or wants to be. But at the same time, it's got good weight to it just from, like, it's not going to fly out of your hand. It's substantial enough to get the job done. Earlier, I talked about how it's got the it's got different slots in it for different angles. So 3 of them are for a 3/32 inch electrode, like what I have, and the other 3 are for 1/16 inch. Now these 2 side ones are honestly just to break a break point. I guess probably if you want to take one full-size electrode and break it into two. I don't know what that necessarily means right now, but one's for a 22.5 degree grind and the other for a 10 degree grind. So obviously the 22.5 gives you a blunt kind of 45 degree nose, and then the 10 degree is going to be a little bit longer. So not focusing on my fingers there. But anyway, you can also see it is a multi-speed unit, and I'm guessing this is just probably a chuck or something when it does come time to replace the blade. Now, the one other thing I'll say before we fire this up for the very first time, the instructions do say, first off, they caution you about using an extension cord, how you can have some power draw, but it also says make sure that the thing is all the way up to speed before you start to sharpen the tungsten. So we'll just listen for that, and we'll get this thing screaming. It does give a recommendation. It's like a 4-speed, that the ideal speed's about a 3. So that's what we'll do for this first one, but let's just see how this thing works. So for the first grind, I will use a brand new electrode that has not even been touched, but we'll just see how it goes. So before I actually grind it though, I did want to turn it on for you guys so you can get a sense for how loud this thing is. So like I said, it is a 4-speed. We talked about the selectable speeds, so let's just go 1. Pretty quiet. I mean, I feel like I can talk over it just fine. 2. Wow, that's quite an improvement from 1. And then 3, the recommended speed. This thing's humming pretty good now. Yeah. I don't see a need really to go up to the 4, but I'm going to switch the camera around, get this in a little better view so you can maybe see an action shot before we get going. So as you can see, that made really short order out of sharpening an electrode. Now, that was 100% real time. There's no speeding any of that up. So here's a side-by-side. Here is the old school, what I used to do with my mini grinder. And as a side-by-side, here is, which, by the way, the mini grinder, I mean, that tungsten's pretty dang tough. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's like compressed carbon. And so you can just see, like, it's a much more pure, I'll see if I can get even closer to the camera lens here. So this might be about as good as it gets for a side-by-side, but again, you can just see the consistency of the grind much better with the new tungsten grinder compared to the old mini grinder, really. And this mini grinder electrode probably represents some of my better work, but you can just see there's less swirl marks on the one from the Eastwood grinder as compared to I mean it's just rough up and down here. This is just buttery smooth. So, like I said, I think it's a fairly reasonably priced tool. It's like the 80 to 90 mark, and maybe that was, that could have been I could have maybe got a Christmas deal. I don't know. On their website, maybe there's, maybe it's a little different right now. But by and large, I think this is money well spent. I'm happy with it. That'll do it for this episode, guys. Until next time, peace out.